Hello and welcome. My name is Marc, the physician founder of Physician Pre-Sentence Report Service. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate, or you want to engage my services, my phone is here, 240-888-7778. I work with you regarding preparation for your pre-sentence interview and in preparation for the final pre-sentence report or the PSR. My emails is drmb@pprsus.com. So as I said, I'm going to go through tonight um, how you can. I don't want you to injure yourself while you're in prison and to prepare for some of the medical issues you may face before you actually get to your pre-sentence interview. So this particular YouTube, if you will, is going to be regarding, it's called a trimalleolar fracture. Basically, it's on three planes, looks pretty gruesome, and it is. But the title is Preventable Prison Injuries. I don't want this to be you. And when you're going into federal prison or a jail, probably state prisons, you're not going to get the best of care. You're going to get whatever is most basic. And chances are, if you're lucky enough to get a second opinion with a specialist, that can take up to 3 years. And so when you have an injury that is, clearly a fracture that needs to be addressed pretty much immediately, even if they have your best interests at heart, there's a lot of paperwork that has to get done and appointments made and staffing to be moved around in order to get you to that outside physician consult. It's not going to happen overnight. And so I'm going to go through and try and impress upon you that healthcare delayed can be healthcare denied. And so throughout the website, you're going to find that there are many instances where healthcare was not provided immediately, and where the courts had to get involved, and where federal judges literally had to order the Federal Bureau of Prisons to release these individuals. And so, action steps you can take when seeing a specialist doesn't happen in a timely fashion. And so, we're going to start here with the American Academy of Orthopedics, where they did a study on orthopedic injuries that happen in prison populations. And the most commonly treated, most frequently, are ankle fractures, metacarpal, or fractures of the wrist. And so these are two at the top. And the ankle fracture is right here, trimalleolar. And the fractures that are the procedures based on surgical or non-surgical treatment, again at the top, are the hand and ankle. And I have links here once you go to the website that you'll be able to just pull this up on your own, and you'll see that it comes right to their website. In the prison population, so different patterns, but metacarpal are the fractures within the wrist. And if I pull this up to the very top of the page, you will see that it's traumatic orthopedic injuries in prison populations. So I didn't make it up. And so the result here, and then I come down here, hand and wrist is most commonly injured reasons, followed by the foot and ankle with complications. Every surgery has a complication. I mean, I don't know if for those of you who have never had a surgery, or if you're going to have a surgery and the doctor tells you that, that they say to you, there's no such thing as a complication, look for another surgeon, because no one can guarantee that the surgery is going to be complication free, the same as no attorney can tell you that they can guarantee you what any judge is going to do at sentencing. And so, they can have infections, non-unions. Non-union means that the bones don't heal. And so these things can happen. And you would rather have these happen in an operating room where you have some degree of say between you and your family, as opposed to you're in a hospital far away from home. Next, and this I'll spend a little bit more time, this is the National Library of Medicine and injuries associated with bunk beds. This is pretty important. If you happen to be an individual where you've had a recent surgery, maybe the surgery was orthopedic, where it was a hip replacement, a knee replacement, a shoulder replacement. Maybe you have a ringing in your ears, tinnitus, a general surgery. You have instability, when you're walking around as you get a bit older. If there's something else that I haven't mentioned, you're a physician and your attorney. Your attorney needs to bring this up with you, but your physician needs to be very clear in their records. Your records need to say that you are not a candidate for a upper bunk, because should you fall from an upper bunk, in people who are elderly, That is a recipe for an end of life. It can kill you. And so this article here, let's see, where do I have the link? I guess that will open it up to the National Library of Medicine, and I guess that's the end of the article. No, at the beginning. Um, Injuries associated. There we go. Injuries associated with bunk beds that occur in jails, and the same as with patients that were coming into my practice. If they are in a higher bunk, you don't you need to be in a bottom bunk, because if you roll out of bed, this picture of a bunk bed, these are bunk beds that are safe because they have a railing at the top. But I'll tell you that there are no bunk beds in prison that have that railing. And so your physician really needs to have, especially if you have some sort of dementia or you forget things, or maybe a seizure disorder that is controlled. It's a lot easier to roll out of bed on the bottom bunk than it is to roll out of bed on the top bunk. And so all of this, needs to be addressed long before you get to your pre-sentence interview. And it needs to be addressed with your attorney first and then with your physician, so that they can spell this out very clearly to the point where the judge can understand it and the Bureau of Prisons can understand it. And this is mortality and cause of death in hip fractures in patients age 65 and older, a population-based study. And we'll click on that. This will also come up, another Library of Medicine, mortality and cause of death in hip fracture patients age 65 and older. And so you just don't want to take this chance. And so that's why I'm putting this here. The goal is not to make everyone nervous, just an ounce of prevention. If you're not sure what to do, give me a call. The consultation's at no charge. My phone number is here, 248-888-7778. Give me a call. I answer for you or for a loved one. I answer and return all of my calls. Other injuries that can occur while you're in prison. When you're in prison, whether you're a short timer or you have a long sentence, if you're going to leave prison and you have a signed contract where you're going to make over $1 million a year, great. But even if you don't have that signed contract, you don't want to get injured while you're in prison, because you're not facing the same medical care that you have at home. And so consequently, you need to, use a lot of the common sense that you have. I realize that it is a mental release to really get out and, play whatever sport, that you want to play. But you need to take care of yourself. So plantar fasciitis is pretty straightforward. There's a ligament at the bottom of the heel. It attaches across the bottom of the heel and attaches right at the place of the heel at the bottom. Some people have bone spurs, some people do not. It was a large part of my practice. The next 3 things he's attached to my website, where I just copy pasted these explanations. There are different bands, and it may rupture, it may not rupture. But either way, if you have pain, it's ice and elevation. If there's a bone spur, the treatment for the bone for this plantar fascia, or the irritation of that ligament on the bone, is not removal of the spur. It's to calm it down, which is a little bit of ice, elevation, and Aleve, or something along those lines. If in fact you tear that ligament at the bottom of the foot, it'll take a little bit longer to heal, but that's a surgical procedure anyway. Painful hammer toe. This is the hammer toe that's contracted, if you will. If it's flexible, it may stretch out when it's taped, similar to this picture here. If it's not and rigid, there's not much you can do about it. By putting some sort of support underneath your toes, it may help a bit. But if it's a rigid hammer toe, like this hammer toe is here, really surgery is the only thing that's going to help it. Otherwise, you may want to get a permission to wear a sneaker or a shoe that has more of a toe box that is wider and higher. I'm not a fan of the steel-toed shoes. So if they are too tight or not wide enough, you need to be able to accommodate that, because that will rub on the top of that toe. And if you're diabetic or have some sort of other soft tissue disease or vascular disease, that's easy enough to rub through to cause an infection. And then you have a larger problem. Tarsal tunnel. Tarsal tunnel is when the nerve on the inside of the ankle here gets inflamed, similar to carpal tunnel, which is on the inside of the wrist. And when that gets inflamed, you'll feel some tingling that'll radiate through the inside of the ankle to the bottom of the foot. The surgical procedure you probably will never get in prison. It does help, but what you're able to do is take some, anti-inflammatory, aspirin, Aleve, um, and help it that way. Some ice, and that will also help the carpal tunnel, which is in the wrist. Also, some sort of inserts, which will give you some arch support on this side of the arch. And I understand that they do have inserts that are available in the prisons nowadays. Stress fractures or hairline fractures. These are similar, but the fracture can only be seen on x-ray after approximately 2 weeks. And then you don't see the fracture, you see it healing. And it's most frequently on the longer bone, metatarsal bone, which are these long bones right here. And the second metatarsal is the longest, or you may see it on the fifth metatarsal bone. And you could see it on other bones as well, but these would be on the more common bones. And normally, um, they've been called march fractures because they occur in the military when they go out on long marches. And so they would see a hairline fracture, and pretty much the soldiers would just kind of walk straight through with them, and they would heal after a period of time. Usually these bones are aligned. And when you see the stress fracture after approximately 2 weeks on x-ray, what you're seeing is a white halo like cotton around the fracture itself. And that shows it's healing. To make it easier to get around, I don't know that they'll have this for you, but there are things called, a generic term is a surgical shoe. They have a rigid flat bottom. This is a sample. It's called a Darko shoe. Ankle sprains and versus trimalleolar fractures. The trimalleolar fracture is pictured right here, but it's also the featured image that I have at the top of this particular page. And it's where you actually have broken the fibular bone, which is on the outside or lateral aspect of the ankle, and the tibial bone, which is on the inside aspect. And the part of the reasons that they break is that the ligament, which is on the inside of the ankle medially, is so strong that it pulls the bone away. And so ankle sprains are when ligaments attach bone to bone. And so ligaments are attaching the bone to bone here. And when that breaks and then it shoves the foot laterally or to the outside in that direction, it also causes the fibula to break in that direction, as it moves in that direction. So if it's not broken, it's going to be hard to get around, but ice and elevation. And so it's called rest. Avoid walking on the ice to avoid a spell swelling, compression, and then elevation. And then you can take over the count pain relievers, ibuprofen, naproxen, but don't take it if you have stomach issues with ulcers. And with no improvement, definitely you want to see a physician and you want to take x-rays, because if it's fractured like this is not a hairline or stress fracture. This will show up. Achilles tendon injuries. Yeah, and again, you don't want to get anything like this in prison because you're just not going to be happy. You will not. You're not going to get treated for, I don't even want to guess how long it's going to take for you to get treated. So you just don't want to have this happen to you. Achilles tendon injuries. Tendon attaches muscle to bone. And so, as I said here, attaches muscle to bone. But you can see here the tendon injury in the Achilles tendon, and it'll be like a bulbous if it's not completely torn through. You may have a little bit of a bulbous tear here. If it tears through, you're going to know, because you're just not going to be able to stand up. If you go to the website, there's 2 little videos here that you'll be able to see. Now, action steps that you can take to keep your life in health. And I think, this makes a lot of sense. Your medical file only indicates that your medical and surgery history dictates a lower bunk. You need to change that. Your doctor needs to be very clear. It needs to say no upper bunk, and it needs to say why. Your doctor needs to spell it out. Your attorney needs to make sure that it gets into, and your personal narrative. I'm not going to go through that here, but your personal narrative hopefully is written along with everything else that your probation officer needs, and everything put together 1 to 2 weeks before your interview. But everything that you're going to provide before the interview date needs to be organized, spell checked, and provided to them a couple of weeks before your interview. And it needs to be reviewed by your attorney, and your doctor's notes need to be very clear. You cannot go into an upper bunk. And quite frankly, hopefully your attorney's spoken to the probation officer and reviewed, your sentencing issues and what, he or she believes is a reasonable sentencing guideline, and possibly the placement request. You want to play sports? Great. And I said this, if you're a short timer, you just don't get hurt. If you think, for example, that you're going to get a second opinion, remember getting a second opinion with a specialist can take up to 3 years. And once you get it and come back to the prison, don't think that the clinical director, the BOP, has to follow that recommendation. They do not. They're not obligated to do that. While this is all going on, I have here, you can read it. Let me open it up. I co-authored this. This is the ability of treatment and rehabilitation in prison, the critical role of the federal pre-sentence report, Marc Bladstein, Faith Spence, Jay Hurst, and Maureen Barrett. And you can go through this. I'm not going to go through it now. I've done other YouTubes on it, but I go through everything that is available for medical care. But once you're in prison, and if you see that you're having a problem, the administrative remedy process is what the Federal Bureau of Prison they encourage that prisoners use or adults in custody use if you have a grievance. So if you're at home, you contact your attorney. If you're in prison, you fill out what's called a BP 8, 9, 10, and 11. And if you don't get any satisfaction, then you fill out a BP, or rather, you fill out a 2241. And there's I roll it into part one, which is what you can do from home. And then part two, what covers everything family or loved ones can do. So I'm going to open this up very briefly. Oh, no, I'm not. That didn't work, did it? Here we go. Okay. So part one and part two. So part one is administrative remedy, and it follows these steps. You need to keep four copies. Let me jump down to where it begins. Options. So the process starts. You fill out a BP8, which is and again, if you're not sure, contact me for a free consult. But BP8 is just a formal conversation because you need to understand the process. So talk to your case manager. How do we do this at your facility? And it's a cop out, but keep a copy of everything that you do. And BP 8, 9, 10, and 11 needs to be, each one has to have the same complaint. So use a copy machine, or when you write it, make 4 copies of everything. Then when you do the BP9, attach the BP8 to the BP9, and then write the exact same thing on the BP9. And that goes to the warden. And you can say that you got a negative response from the BP8 or no response, and you want to go to BP9. And it says, what your problem is and what you want to do, what your problem, what you want as a response. And if you don't have anything, you wait, and you need a calendar, 20 days. BP10 is going to go to the BP leadership. So you're going to find out wherever your regional director is. Let's say you're in a mid-Atlantic region, that's where your prison is, and then you're going to pick one of these 2 places, or I would send it to both, and then double check with this particular, these names up here, and then I would mail that off and keep a return receipt, or keep a date that you sent it. With no response, remember, you made copies of everything now from the BP 10 and the BP 9 and the BP 8. You have 4 copies of everything. Now you can do the same thing, and you're going to write the BP 11 with the same complaint, and you can make 4 copies of the 11, and you're going to attach BP 8, 9, 10 to the 11. And the same thing, this is going to go to the Office of General Counsel in DC. You wait 40 calendar days. And if you don't hear anything, or if you get a negative reply, then you can go ahead and you fill out 2241. And this goes to your judge. At the same time, part 2 is what the family can do. And then I go through that they need to keep an organized file of all the conversations they've had with you. They can send copies to everyone up here, regional directors, Western, Northeast, with all the regional directors. They can then go ahead and talk to the congressman. They can send a formal copy to the warden. They can send a copy to the BOP directors. They can go all out. And then the reason why is because you're not going to be the first. You're going to need legal representation, but justice moves slowly. And so why is important? Because the Federal Bureau of Prisons, medical care sometimes is denied. And so we have, in October 10, the judge holds the Federal Bureau of Prisons in contempt for allowing someone to waste away from untreated cancer. So I'm not making this stuff up. 1 in 4 inmates, it doesn't happen a lot, which is why it makes it to newspapers. if I pull this up, hopefully I have it saved. Here it goes. Had cancer, let alone terminal cancer. This disgusted Judge Dalton or the Bureau of Prisons to release him. And this is, judge holds the Federal Bureau of Prisons in contempt. And so this is why, it's very important to go ahead and advocate. And this is why, and advocating for medical care when it's denied, the Sochi Center, they said this is between Yale School of Medicine and their law school. They say they know that when, family members get engaged, that things happen more quickly. And so, I hope that this has helped you get through this more easily. You can find all this on my website. And I hope that you've had, this has been, a little bit of help to you. Lastly, the family can go ahead and then get in touch with FAM, and they can, when they get a hold of their Congress representative, they can invite them to visit the prison. And so there's a lot here. I realize I've gone through everything pretty quickly. I hope that, again, that you found this helpful, and I appreciate you taking the time to visit with me, and have a good day. Again, reach out to me if you have any questions or concerns, 240-888, should you wish to engage my services. Again, 240-888-7778, Physician Pre-Sentence Report Service, Physician Prison Consultants, PSR Preparation Service.